Just three ordinary guys trying to understand the crazy world around them. We don't have all the answers, but we've got all the questions. You're listening to Just Add Bourbon with Jimmy, JD, and Brad.
I'm Jimmy Don Kerr.
I'm Brad Broaddus.
And I'm JD Damon.
And you are listening to the Just Add Bourbon podcast. It is another beautiful but chilly Sunday evening here in the hills of eastern Kentucky. And guys, we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about this week. But before we jump in, I do want to remind everybody that you can check us out on iTunes and then on the Podbean app. Also, Spotify. We post our podcast on Facebook every week and Twitter. And then we do have a YouTube audio channel right now. We would really appreciate if you guys would go there and subscribe. It would help us out a great deal. And again, thanks for listening. We've had another good week of downloads. We even got a download in Israel. So if you're in Israel and you're listening, would you please message the Facebook page and let us know how you found the Just Add Bourbon podcast? Because I would love to know how somebody in Israel found our podcast and listened to it. But the foreign countries blows my mind. Is that you guys?
Yeah, for sure.
It blows my mind. I just wonder how they find it. So, yeah. But anyway, thanks again, guys, for listening. And those are all the places you can check us out on.
I think Brad was on something. We started posting our pictures. And, look at us, guys.
Well,
of course they're going to find us.
They are going to find us. Three handsome men talking about God knows what.
Right.
So, guys, let's get into the topics this week. Like I said, there's a bunch of good stuff to talk about. I think we'll start off this week with the California bill that passed, where they basically said that student athletes in colleges could make money off of their name and likeness. And that has triggered a bunch of other states to kind of do the same thing. Now, the NCAA came out and said, hey, please, take a breath. Wait, don't do anything just yet. Let us look into this. We realize that it's time, maybe for the NCAA to change the way they do things. But almost immediately after California passed their bill, then you got one from Florida. Who else, Brad? Did you know any of the others that passed?
I don't remember exactly what states, but I think there was, 4 or 5 of them so far?
Yeah, you had Florida, you had North Carolina was talking about it, and as a matter of fact, Kentucky actually has one working right now too. State Senator Morgan McGarvey, he's a Democrat out of Louisville, has started working on one back in August. And so I think this is a change, guys, that's going to change, college athletics as we know it, especially for, basketball and football. So you guys got any kind of comment? JD, we'll start with you. Any kind of comment? I know we talked about this on a podcast a few weeks ago, but just kind of a follow-up now that it's actually happened and you got all these other states following suit.
The only thing I have to say about it is, kudos to those guys. It's about time. These amateur athletes have been taken advantage of for years and years and years. It's time. It's past time they got paid for it, and I'm glad. I think it's the right thing. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I don't. Like we talked about on the when we did the episode on that. I definitely don't have a problem with it at all. Agree with a lot of it. Who knows when this thing rolls out? Maybe we're creating a monster here. But let's see what happens. But, you knew, just like we talked about on there, if California does it, if Kentucky or North Carolina one does it, the other one's going to do it. And if you just take just Kentucky and North Carolina, if you've got Kentucky, Louisville, Duke, North Carolina, that changes the whole game right there because everybody else is going to have to follow suit.
And I'm going to go back to what I said before. A lot of these kids are underprivileged to begin with. And then, the stress and the burden of being a college student is tough, guys. I read a story, about a guy named Donnie Edwards who used to play in California. And he got suspended for a game because his agent bought him groceries.
I read that. That was crazy. He actually got, and he said, and the player said he had no idea who even bought the groceries.
Yeah. Well,
that's pretty crazy, though, that you would get suspended over somebody buying you food. And I've heard a lot of those stories. I think Kimball Walker from UConn actually talked about it one time, said that, they would go to bed starving to death because they weren't allowed to, they didn't have the money to eat outside of campus most of the time and eat the campus food. Now, John Calipari was on KSR this week, and they asked him about it, and he was really kind of non-committal because Cal's kind of pushed that narrative for a long, long time. He was probably the first person to really push that narrative. And he was kind of non-committal because he was talking about the unintended consequences of things that could happen. And then they were later talking about, could the advertisements that these guys get negatively impact the schools in some way? Like, what if one goes and does an ad for a strip club?
Right. I mean, I think no matter what, this bill's not going to be perfect when it comes out. I think we all know that, right? It's going to have its problems, but it's a step in the right direction. One proposal I've seen from a Democratic state senator in New York says let's take 15% of the ticket sales and pay the athletes.
Yeah, and actually spread it out over. And I thought that was actually a pretty decent idea, where you could take it and spread it among all the college athletes for every program there.
Right.
But the guys who have the star power, who can truly sell their likeness, you let those guys make the money that they can. And I feel like that at the end of the day, I feel like Congress is actually going to have to get involved in this. I think there's going to have to be one set of rules. I feel like you're going to have a federal regulation, or else you're going to have all these different regulations for all these different states, and it's just going to be mass chaos.
For sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, I think that I'm like JD. I think it's a step in the right direction because these schools make tons and tons of money off these athletes, and these guys are getting nothing in return. I mean, they're getting an education. A lot of people will argue that, and that is.
They don't put food on the table, man.
That's right. Not while they're there.
Right now.
Not while they're there, and then their families are struggling too. So, guys, I thought that was a good topic to get into, and it kind of segues us into the next topic as well, which was one of the crazier things I've seen, I feel like, in a while, especially when it comes to free speech and sports, is there was a big dust-up between the NBA and China this week. And the general manager from the Houston Rockets. Now, the Houston Rockets are a real big team in China. They're very, very popular. The Rockets make a ton of money. There's a lot of NBA athletes who make money from endorsements from China. And the GM, the Rockets were going to be playing over there. And, of course, the Rockets are popular because of Yao Ming. And Yao Ming, the 7-footer who played for the Rockets for a long time, he's also the head of the Chinese Basketball Association there, and he was really upset by it. But with all the protests that have been going on in Hong Kong, this general manager from the Rockets tweeted, we support the people in Hong Kong and, something around their fight for democracy. That really, really upset the Chinese government, which then turned into them canceling their, all these deals, all these monetary deals with players and with the Rockets and with the NBA itself. And then they were going to cancel the game that they were playing there. And it ended up getting played, but there was no sponsorship for the game. So financially, it was a big, big hit.
$25 million to 25 mil.
Yeah. So, and then you had the NBA, Adam Silver. They put out some statements, and I felt like from the American standpoint, and being a place of free speech, that he probably hit the mark. But they released a completely different statement in China, saying, "Oh, we're sorry. We didn't mean to offend the Chinese people." I mean, it was kind of. I'll find it in a second while we're talking about it, and I'll read the statements to you. But then you had Steve Kerr, who's Mr. Woke himself. Cool last name.
Right.
But Mr. Woke himself, who wouldn't comment at all. And then Trump, of course, goes after him, and then Trump, he fires back at Trump. I said it was just a crazy week, and for the NBA and China and free speech, I thought it was just nuts.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing for me is, you got Steve Kerr and these guys who will blast everything, anything socially. They have something to say about it. I don't particularly care for what Kerr has to say, but I think it's awesome that we live in a country where they can say it.
Absolutely.
But how amazing is that you can have coaches and players, and please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think they have the right. I want the coaches and players and whoever to come out and be able to bash the president or whatever they want to say, right? Because that's the country we live in.
Absolutely.
But how crazy is it that they can come out and bash what's going on in our country, but they cannot come out and talk about another country who, honestly, it's looking is one of our biggest threats, one of our biggest opponents, and they can't speak out about that. And it reminds me of the Voltaire quote, "If you want to know who controls you, look at who you're not allowed to criticize." So with the NBA, and it's not just the NBA, you've got the NBA who has got all of this money tied in, right? So you've also got Hollywood is the same deal. You know, China's been coming in and buying, I think they own, is it AMC, the movie theaters? I think they bought another one, Legend. I can't remember what it was, but there's a number of them that they own there.
I think the Chinese organization is actually the largest landowners in Los Angeles. They own more land than anybody in Los Angeles County.
So if you're thinking, aside from, you know, as adults, a lot of people will listen to the news or politicians or whatever, but you think about kids. Who do they get their social opinions from, would you say, more than anybody? Sports figures or what they see in Hollywood?
Absolutely.
So that should really scare people, the influence, that China has big enough influence
To shut you down.
that these people, like you said, Captain Woke, who has an opinion on everything, knows he better not speak up.
Crickets.
And so where's LeBron and these people on this issue?
Yeah.
Because now what I would have respect for is for somebody standing up and saying, hey, look, I know that this is probably going to blacklist me in the NBA. And I know that this might cost me my shoe contract. But this is what's right. And I support these people, or I support this cause. Do you think you're going to see that?
No, there's too much money involved. And I think that's the root of their problem. Now, I think it's wrong. We live in America, a place where you are free to do and say what you want within the law, correct? But
Yes,
you are allowed to speak out if you disagree with something. We're doing it here.
Absolutely.
We're having a conversation about things that some people may not agree with.
Right.
But we're allowed to do it. And we get to put it out on iTunes and whatever. It's a great place to live. And then you've got a communist country who constantly suppresses free speech. And I think this guy making a tweet about, hey, we're from a democratic country. You would think, yeah, we support your right to do that. But then you're talking about the Rockets losing $25 million. You had Russell Westbrook and James Harden get on there and apologize. That's about dollars for them. LeBron's the same thing. It's about money. But it is very, very hypocritical that they are, on every social issue in this country, they have a comment. But yet, you have a communist country, and they won't say a word because they're looking to get paid.
I would just like to see them be honest and come out. I would like to see the Nike T-shirt or the commercial that says, what was the one? Just do it, even if it means sacrificing everything. And then at the bottom say, except money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd like to be able to disagree with you all, but I can't on this one. I mean, it's plain for all of us to see, right? It's about the money. It's not the social issue, not social conscience. We know those guys. I agree with the tweet that was originally put out that we stand with the protesters in Hong Kong that want the democracy, want the government control to go away. Don't want the heavy hand of the government on us all the time. But like you said, man, these guys are backing off in a hurry.
Quick, man. I mean, it was quick.
In a hurry.
And, the thing with this is with Hong Kong is, I think the main protest is around this extradition bill, where Hong Kong is almost kind of its own place. It's kind of has sovereignty almost from China in a way. What this extradition bill was going to do would be allow these people to be extradited. There was a couple countries involved, but mainland China was one of them. So what their concern is that China will start extraditing their political leaders. So these people are basically standing up for their sovereignty in Hong Kong. And I think there's been obviously a lot of violence around it already.
Mm-hmm.
So China's kind of having to play both sides because they want this to go away, but at the same time, the last thing they want is to see something like, when we were kids in the Tiananmen Square, when you had the students that got shot, a number of them, what was hundreds, thousands? I think that was, 1989? It's been a long time ago. But now because of the internet, you can't do some of the things that you could do in the past because you've got 8,000 videos of it. You've got information getting out in live time. But just the silence from the NBA or what these guys have been, you can tell that they're scared to death to say anything about it.
I mean, do you think that is? I mean, because at the end of the day, to me, it's about the money. Is LeBron's worried about losing shoe sales in China? you've got Harden and Westbrook, who both play for the Rockets, who stood to make a ton of money off China, sponsorship deals in China, and now that's going to go away. And so I think they're trying to keep this hush-hush, but I think this story will continue to grow, and I think it's one that we'll probably get to talk about a bunch more times.
Now, let me be clear, though. I'm not saying I wouldn't do the same thing, because we're talking about millions of dollars, guys. I'm not. If you put yourself, if it comes to me speaking out on a social issue, or my kids or me getting a new yacht or a new airplane, man, it's like a comment saying, let's say they come a comedy promotion. People come to me and say, JD, we got you the show at Madison Square Garden. You're going to sell it out. We're going to promote it like crazy. But you can't say this, or this. Now, will I lose my artistic integrity by selling out and doing that? Or am I going to get paid?
Oh, you're going to get paid. I mean, and like I said, I don't know that I would do... It's easy for me to sit here and talk about it, but I don't necessarily disagree, even with the NBA guys, what they're doing. They make a lot of money there. It's $25 million for the Rockets, potentially. I get it, and I get what Westbrook and James and all them are saying. The problem I have is they talk nonstop about American issues.
Right.
And then for something like that to come up, that is actually a problem. It's a communist country.
Right.
That's where my issue with that is.
No, I get it.
You've got the, however you pronounce it, the Falun Gong practitioners, which is kind of the spiritual group there that has been hundreds of thousands of them have been sent to prison or re-education centers. And, these people are enslaved, and they think this is a source for a lot of this organ harvesting, which we're going to get into another time.
Right.
But I'm like Jimmy Don, my issue is not if somebody just came out and they said, hey, look, this is my employer, they're involved with these companies, whatever my personal opinion is, I'm here to play basketball, and you all work that stuff out, but I'm not going to use this platform for that out of respect for my employer. I would respect that.
Right.
But you can't do that on one item, and then you want to get involved socially with everything else when you know that there is humanitarian crisis as far as the way people have been treated.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, I get it. I'm just saying, looking at it from their point of view, that's money in their pocket. It's tough. They put themselves in a tough position by being so outspoken on American issues.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
And now put your money where your mouth is.
It's similar to politicians and like female, feminist groups in the Middle East. It's very similar to that, where they'll crush us here in this country and how we do things, but yet the politicians, for example, won't say a thing about the Middle East, where they treat women like dirt.
Right.
They make them wear the veils. You can't see them. There's mutilation that happens. There's all these crazy things, but yet you can't speak out against them.
Yeah, and that's the issue with Kurt. If he would have come out even on this, even with everything that he said, and just said, "Hey, look, I'm not going to talk about this. We have a relationship with China and the NBA, and they've been good to us, and I'm not going to get into this." That's fine with me. But then he comes out in his response is he wants to talk about, we want to talk about this with China, when in America we've got this going on with assault rifles or AR-15s or whatever. So I'm thinking, okay, you think about how many people are killed with rifles. Now let's do Mao Zedong, right? When most estimates is that he murdered, 50 plus million. And that's where, for me, I'm out.
Yeah. You're talking about Mao, right?
Right.
And that's always an interesting reference to me, because people always say, they compare you, if you're evil, who are you?
Hitler.
Hitler is nobody compared to Mao.
Yeah, Mao killed a lot more people than Hitler ever did.
Mao killed a lot more people than Hitler ever dreamed of killing.
It was like 60 million or something crazy, some crazy
50
number
plus,
like that.
yeah,
50 plus million,
50 plus million. And you've got Stalin, you've got
Stalin,
all of the history
million, right?
of the communist places and just genocides over and over. But the thing with Hitler, and this is a little off topic, but I want to touch on this because you said it. Everybody says if you do this, you're Hitler, and you're a Nazi. And I think people think it's either a joke or it's like, they're just saying that. These words that people are using, what they're calling people, is extremely, extremely important. Because what you're trying to do, if you go back to Nazi Germany, a lot of these people that were going and killing these people in gas chambers, We think of them as being crazy Neanderthals with clubs and whatever. A lot of these were normal people. They had families. They would be out dancing on the weekends, and then Monday morning, just like going to work, they would go in these gas chambers and kill people. Yeah. And why were they able to do that? Is because mentally they were brainwashed into believing that these individuals were less than human. So now when you say these terms, Nazi, how many times have you heard, like with Antifa and these different things, they'll say, oh, punch a Nazi or do this. So now it's to the point you've got 80-year-old women walking across the street with a walker. And these people are justifying violence because they're saying that you're Hitler. You'll hear these people say, well, if you could go back in time and you could kill baby Hitler, would you do it? And people don't think anything about that stuff. But think about what you're saying there, right? You're justifying taking people out. So when you see these things, just like with the statues, for instance, when they were taking down the statues and you had these big arguments about should you take down the statues. Right. Well, me personally, I don't care about the statues. I don't think that people should be, worshipped in that way. I don't care about the statues themselves, but here's what the problem is. The issue's not even about the statues. It's about the people. And the first step is taking down the statues. And the next step is saying, okay, well, these people, we took down their statues because they were bad people. So the more you dehumanize them, then you say, okay, well, if we took down the statues, then why are we going by documents that these people wrote? Right? So when you get into the Constitution, these different things, and it is like boiling the frog, where you go from one step to the next. And it's the same thing with the Nazi thing. It's about putting things out there and making somebody less than human.
Touch on your point about the Nazis and how these people were able to go to work, just march these people in the gas chambers. And then it gets back to the question of what is good, who is good. Those people were so brainwashed, they thought what they were doing was good. They thought they were doing God's work, in a lot of ways. Some of these people were really on board with the Jews were dirty, nasty, lower than us, and they need to die to better our planet.
Do you think you're seeing some of that in America today where, and I'm asking this because I don't know the answer, but some of the things that I read, like almost trying to normalize, like I've seen articles where they're trying to normalize pedophilia, where they're trying to normalize, and again, we've had conversations about transgender, we all know where we stand on that, but where you're starting with children at young ages, telling them, well, you can be whatever you want to be. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but do you think we're seeing some of that in America today, some of the brainwashing?
Yeah, I mean, you're like it. I saw another one the other day at one of these public libraries, and they have these transgender strippers come in and are stripping for small children. Right? That's child abuse. Again, I stand firm. As an adult, you be who you want to be. I don't have to agree with your lifestyle. I don't expect you to agree with mine as an adult. If you want to dress as the opposite sex, if you want to live that, whatever happens, that makes no difference to me. I don't care. But when you're talking about taking small children that are in the developmental stages, mentally, they are warping these kids' minds. And I don't know at what point that parents are going to stand up and say, okay, this is not about social acceptance anymore. We've got to protect our kids. Again, if your kid gets older, if your kid is, if they're gay or if they're whatever, as an adult, look,
so be it, right?
I'm not going to love my kids any different.
No.
But you're taking small children in the developmental stages when their brain is being created. I mean, in that crucial point from when they're an infant until they're 7 years old, and just completely twisting people's minds around.
So I've got an incident. I want to bring up and maybe take this conversation a little bit different than what we projected. So, I think it was Thursday. There was a volleyball game at the high school. And one of my good friend's daughter plays on the volleyball team. He was up there. He went to the restroom and came out. A bunch of girls came out of the girls' bathroom. But there was a boy that came up with him in high school. And he doesn't claim to be transgender, but he does claim to be homosexual. And he goes, I had a real problem with that. So how do you guys feel about that? As high school students, should that be allowed?
Absolutely not.
I don't think so either. I mean, I'll have a daughter that'll be in high school soon, so will you.
Right.
And I don't know how I would feel about them going into a bathroom with a boy, whether that boy is gay or straight. Definitely if he's not straight, my goodness. You know what I'm saying? It's that the idea of that really bothers me. I don't know how I would react to that. That just kind of bothers me to think that, they're still pretty young. They're learning things. They probably know way more than you and I really think they know at this point.
Sure.
But why, if it's your anatomy is what it is. Again, if
what's going on upstairs doesn't affect your anatomy, right?
Right. I'm not saying people don't feel that way or they don't identify something, but whatever. But when we're talking about public places, you got to stick people up on the wall. And if you have certain anatomy, you go in this bathroom. If you have certain anatomy, you go in that bathroom. The other part is you deal with in your own life, but you don't bring it into other people's. I'm not going in the female's restroom, and females shouldn't come in the men's and vice versa.
So here's where I come down on it. I don't feel like high school students should be going into the other people's bathrooms, especially if they're only homosexual, not transgender. I think if they're transgender, I can see that after they're adults, more so than a homosexual high school student. Does that make sense? I think a high school student, guys,
You're still in that
you're
developmental
still learning,
age.
man. You don't know a thing right now. You don't know nothing. So don't pretend you do. And let's not pretend let's not give them the responsibility and put them in a position for bad things to happen, right? Does that make sense, man?
That makes sense.
Let's keep them. Let's use common sense. And I don't want to experiment with my daughter with a boy in her bathroom. I don't want her to have that experience. Never. Especially while she's a young girl. Now when she gets to be 20 years old or 25 years old, whatever, and she's around some transgender people, and I probably feel differently about that than I do this specific situation.
I'd have to agree with you on that because I'm kind of the same place. Especially if that, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25, something like that. And I just don't want a boy going into the bathroom with my daughter and whipping it out. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm looking for my daughter's experience growing up.
Sure.
And I'm very liberal socially as far as gay rights and those things, but when it comes to my child and we got a boy going into the bathroom, it kind of changes the thing.
That's a balance I had to find. Because I'm the liberal dad, but I'm also dad, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just think about what that opens the door up to. Okay, so if you said, okay, this person is, they identify as the other sex and all that stuff. So what about the pervert that wants to go in and take pictures of your little girl or wants to get on the stall and do pull-ups while they're sitting in the stall, right? And all they've got to do to get away from that is they can just say, oh, I'm transgender, I'm going to put on a skirt, and then I'm going to go in here and carry on with being a pervert.
And I feel like it handcuffs school officials, first off, because what you say, no, you're not gay. Well, yes, I am. Well, you're not transgender. Yes, I am. Well, you don't ever act gay. What does a gay person act like? You know what I mean?
Right, you can't win that argument.
You can't win. You cannot win. It puts you in a bad spot. Let's just leave it. Let's put the boys in the boys' bathrooms and the girls in the girls' bathrooms.
Yeah, if you have a certain anatomy, you go here.
Right.
The other, you go here.
And the bathroom, it's not about it. Because public restrooms aren't about sexuality, right?
Right. It's a place to use the bathroom.
Just because you're gay doesn't mean you need to go in the girls' bathroom. There's no reason for you to be in there. That's just how I feel about it.
No, but you're right, though. That's because when you think about it, I have these certain beliefs, but when it comes to my daughter,
it's a different set, right?
It's just a different set, man.
Sure.
The way I look at it, it's just completely different. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I didn't know that. That is. I like that you brought that up because that is, and that changes everything too. Though when it comes to your own situation, you can have a general belief about something, but then it comes to your daughter. You're kind of like, back up, dude. Go to your own bathroom.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So here's an interesting thing. We're talking about kids.
Sure.
We're completely off the rail here. So let's stay off the rails.
Let's go with it.
Let's stay off the rails. So you saw the girl, it was a 14-year-old girl, went to the United Nations and gave a speech on climate change.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings me, my thought about that was, look, I'm not a climate change denier per se. I think there is climate change. I think maybe that a lot of that's the natural progression of our planet. There probably is some impact with, humans have some impact. there's a lot of scientists out there who will say that it does, a lot that say that there is no climate change. You'll have that. Do we believe that a 14-year-old has the, number one, the experience and the knowledge to go to someplace like the United Nations and say that, hey, we don't do something right now, we're all going to die in 5 years?
I think it's a marketing ploy. I think they just want to make her the face of this movement. But I want to listen to, Neil Tyson deGrasse before I listen to this little 14-year-old girl from wherever she's from. I'm not interested in what she has to say. I really just ain't. I want to talk to the experts. I'll listen to the experts. Give me the guys with the information. Give me the information. Little girl, you go sit down. But I don't blame her. It's not her fault.
Right.
It's the people that's propping her up.
And it kind of goes back to what Brad was saying too, like with the young children and the transgender and having these strippers come to the library. It kind of goes back to that where did you call it, did I hear you say that right, that you called it, man, it's child abuse. You're scaring these children to death too, thinking that the planet's going to be destroyed in 5 years. If I was 14 years old, man, that'd scare me to death if a bunch of adults were telling me that. But at the same time, when we were growing up, this same conversation was being had. They just keep moving the date, of when the whole planet's going to explode because of climate change. The date just keeps getting moved. I mean, in the 70s it was one thing, in the 80s it was one, in the 90s it was one, and now we're here.
I remember the acid rain from the 80s and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were told, we were going to die when we were kids, and I always joke about the Babylon Bee on here, but it's so funny because it's more like real news now. But they had something last week that said the world is something about the world's going to come to an end at this date, or until we change it again and move it out. They keep pushing this stuff down. But the thing with the kids is it's all about emotion.
Right.
Because if you can take the kids and they can get up and give a powerful speech, go back to, gosh, I guess that would have been early 90s, I believe. But there was another girl that got up and gave a speech. I recommend that everybody, if you can find that speech, if I can find it, I'll post it on our Twitter. But listen to that speech and then listen to the new speech and see how similar those are. But the good thing that's going on now is people are seeing through the propaganda. And I'm not saying we can have a conversation about climate change and all that, right?
Right, absolutely.
I'm not
talking about. We're talking about
right, but I'm just talking about the kids being used as props and the messages being pushed through. And they run the same plays over and over and over. And I think now, they've run that Hail Mary for 50, 60 years or longer. And now I don't think it's working anymore. And people are starting to see through it. People on both sides are starting to see through it. I mean, do you agree as a liberal that even though, we sit here and we banter back and forth on a lot of the shows, we might not agree on the way that you get there, but on 99% of the topics, you and I agree almost 100% on the outcome that we want.
Absolutely.
Right? We want everybody to be taken care of. Right. We want this. We want everybody to have all these.
We want more winners than losers.
We want everybody to win. We just have differences of opinion.
How to get there.
On how you get there.
Right.
But I think we both see, or we all three see, that the propaganda that's been thrown on us for our entire lives, the things, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the media, whatever, that we are being bombarded with just pure propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, the cycles of the Earth, I don't think there's any denying that, right?
Right. I mean, that's just...
You ever heard of the Ice Age?
Yeah.
Them using this girl as their messenger, I feel like they're really stretching, you're trying to push her on us. And it may be effective for them, that's good, whatever. But I just feel like it's not healthy for her.
I don't think so either, and I think that it's just, I don't know.
Do you think she's sleeping very good, or do you think she's stressed to the max?
She's stressed to the max, man.
She's got to be.
She's a 14-year-old kid that is scared
talking
to
to
death.
the United Nations.
Yeah, and she's scared to death that the planet's going to explode if something doesn't change. I don't know. I just have a problem with them using a child. I really do.
And I've seen the NRA, take pictures of the kids with the big guns and stuff. That's not cool. That's not cool.
I don't think it's cool for the NRA to do that either. Right. All right, so let's kind of jump back into some mainstream topics that, some current event stuff.
Sorry.
I know that was perfect, man. I actually love that. I love that discussion. I like getting off the rails. So
we were talking about China NBA, by the way. We got there.
yeah, that's how we got there. I love it. That's my favorite part of doing this. So just we'll do some quick hitters. Just some things that happened in the news this week, and then I think we want to have a little extended conversation about another topic. One, what we've been talking about the last two shows is the Trump impeachment. So we're in week 3 of this, basically. We still haven't taken it to a vote to impeach Trump. Trump actually kind of made what I would call kind of a ballsy play when he brought who was the guy he brought from the other country? It was the ambassador that he brought over. Because Schiff and them basically said, look, if you don't do this, I forget exactly how it all went down.
It basically what they said, what Schiff and Pelosi said would lead you to believe if you try to obstruct in any way or don't let somebody testify, that we're going to move forward with impeachment. And I think what they're dealing with now is Pelosi knows that they don't have the votes, that it's not going to be because what you're looking at is you've got a lot of Democrats who are in places where Trump is extremely popular. Like I think around here now, I know he's Senate, but Joe Manchin, for instance, in West Virginia, he's been around there, and he's, a lot of people like him. He's a Democrat, but he's in an area where a lot of people support Trump. These guys in the Congress that are like that, they don't want to get on national TV and raise their hand and have to pull that lever, right? And she knows that. And they were calling his bluff, and he pretty much said, okay, throw your cards out on the table. If you want to take it, let's take it to a vote. And they still haven't. My guess is they won't.
I don't think they will either. I think you maybe said this last week, JD, that this is more about the elections next year than it is anything.
I think so.
Yeah, and so there's really nothing new. You did have some stuff come out on this whistleblower with this Ukraine call that he worked for Joe Biden, and that
Biden was the vice president.
When Biden was the vice president, the whistleblower did meet with Schiff's team. May have had some assistance in what he wrote up, or he or she wrote up.
I kind of understand that though, because
I do too, actually.
The guy he was reporting, was running the intelligence committee, so he actually needed direction of where to go with the complaint. So I understand that.
I thought we would bring that up just as a quick hitter, just because we've talked about it for 2 weeks.
Sure.
There's not a whole lot new to add. You still got people flipping out in every direction. Right. The Republicans think it's one thing, the Democrats think it's another, and it's just getting played out at this point. So, second thing, Trump pulled troops out of Syria.
Yeah.
And I know we've had this conversation multiple times on here about these endless wars. I think, the military-industrial complex. Right. And one of the things I found interesting, and what I've kind of come to believe, and maybe this is the conspiracy theorist in me, is that both sides are mad at him for pulling out of Syria. He's getting flack from the Republicans. Lindsey Graham has been his biggest supporter, but has crushed him on this. You got the Democrats flipping out. So he's probably doing the right thing.
Lindsey Graham's historically been a warmonger. Again, me personally, and we can sit here and speculate on a lot of this stuff with wars. I try to look into this and make sense of it. But I'll tell you what, if you go down in the rabbit hole and try to understand the Kurds and the different factions, because it's not just like one group, they're spread out in multiple countries.
Sure. There's
a whole lot of things going on. I think we're naive to say that we really understand everything that's going on here. But me personally, we've been in these places forever and ever, and where does it stop? And we know that there's a lot of money being made on us being in any kind of war.
Yeah, and it's a big expense on the taxpayers of the United States, and you've got a lot of sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, family members that I would love to see get to come back home.
That's true. Here's where I'll stand on it. I don't know. I don't have all the information. I don't know. Part of me feels really, really bad for these Turks, though. We pulled out there. These guys that we fought beside of for.
Talking about the Kurds.
Oh, the Kurds, yeah.
Yeah.
That we fought beside of for a long, long time. We promised them protection. We're going to be there. And then they were like, all right, peace out. And now we've left them to their fate. One guy said, you've left us to our fate. And it's not going to be good. It's going to end up really, really bad for them. But it's tough. When do you get to that point where it's I read a book a long time ago about Vietnam. It was called Acceptable Loss. The story was told the guy went to Vietnam as a young private, and one of the old sergeants there was like, "Oh, don't worry, they're going to stay here. This ain't a winnable war. They're going to stay here and spend money until it's not an acceptable loss anymore. In lives, in money, in time." And I, feel like that's played out again in the Middle East. We've had our acceptable loss, and now we're parting ways. And it's tough. It's a tough situation we left Vietnam in. It's a tough situation we're leaving there in.
And, here's something that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is because I'm like you. I know how I feel about being in these endless wars, but I really don't have enough information. I've tried to look into this, but I still really don't have enough information to feel comfortable with, dying on the hill of whether you stay or, my initial feeling, and this was way before Trump, is that we do pull out all this stuff. But I don't know, I'm not there, right? So I understand the argument on both sides. But the people that wanted us to pull out all these places before, now because Trump's doing it, then they want us to stay. And then the other thing I can't understand is with Turkey. Now, don't get me wrong. It seems to me that Erdogan is obviously a bad player. But the same people that are coming out and saying, okay, well, you can't do this and let Turkey invade because Erdogan is a dictator, are the same people that are saying, well, no, we need to have this relationship with the UN. And Turkey is a member of the UN with us. So what does that mean?
It's a messy situation. That's all it means. It means
It really
it's a mess.
is.
There's no right play. There's not a right play. But to me, at the end of the day, I can't criticize him for staying. I can't criticize him for going. But I will say, I'm about saving American lives. And if this saves American lives, I'm all for it. I hope long term that's what it does.
Me too. And I'm
I
like
agree.
you. It's just very complicated, and hopefully, he makes the right call here. Hopefully it works out best for everybody. All right, so the other thing, we were talking about whistleblowers. And I found this to be an interesting story this week as well. And I'm going to read this. This is from the Military Times, but this is pretty similar to many other articles I read about this particular topic. A Defense Intelligence Agency official was arrested Wednesday and charged with leaking classified intelligence information to 2 journalists, including a reporter he was dating, the Justice Department has said. Henry Kyle Fries, he was 30. He was arrested by the FBI on Wednesday morning when he arrived at work at the DIA facility in Virginia. So, another leaker. Apparently, he was dating the reporter, and then he agreed to leak highly classified information to this other reporter as long as it helped the first one.
Listen, is she a Russian spy? Because if she is, I give him a pass. If she's not, then
Right, the Russian spy thing, we have confirmed that if you're a Russian spy, JD and Jimmy Don may let you pass for that one.
And I'm kind of wondering what is the kind of seeing a pattern here with, you got the Kyle phrase and kind of the same as James Wolfe, where they were leaking information to a reporter that they were having an intimate relationship with. But one thing about this specifically is with the leakers, I think we can expect on future episodes, this is going to start popping up a lot more. There were leak investigations that were started in 2017. I know Jeff Sessions, I think, opened up 27 different leak investigations. But on these leaks, you've had this guy, you had James Wolfe, who was the former Senate Intelligence Committee security director, who was leaking to Allie Watkins at the New York Times, and I think he was having a relationship with her as well. But just so this kind of makes sense when this stuff starts rolling out in the future, just how they're catching these leakers. I'm not saying this is how they're catching all of them, but I had somebody ask me recently, they said, well, when they catch these leakers, how are they catching these people? And what they do is they will use, call them whatever you will, canary traps, barium meals is another word. So basically what they'll do is, Jimmy Don, say that you're having your weekly staff meeting, right? And you've got, 15 employees. Mm-hmm. Well, every week after you have the staff meeting, you're giving away company, private company information, whether it be numbers, anything like that. So you have your meeting, and then within a couple days, it's popping up in the Mountain Citizen newspaper or the Courier Journal, or it's immediately getting to the media. So how they catch these people is, what you would do is when you pass out that information in next week's meeting, say you give it to 15 people, well, you're giving them basically the exact same information, with the exception of maybe one bit of information that's different. You will have a leak marker, basically. So you might change a date, you might change a number, just something on each one, and you know exactly who you gave what information to. So then a couple days later, when that pops up in the Herald Leader or on the news, you know exactly who leaked, because you know which information got to. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
the way I
false
explained it?
information.
Right.
Guys, that's a mob play. That's how they found out who was, working for the cops, who was working with the cops. Give you some information, you run and tell the cops that it was wrong information, but now I know who I told you the information to, and now you're dead. Have you ever watched The Departed?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That was, it's one of my favorite movies, but that's what they did, to sniff out the rat finally,
And I think that's a lot of the information
Sure.
that's got out in the last couple of years, because if you think about it, the stuff that was leaked has been crazy stuff. Like the stuff you get leaked out. Like, even, let's use the White House, for example. If something gets leaked out, it's like, oh, well, the president's Secretary of State has tried to put rat poison in his mashed potatoes, or, Trump said this in a meeting. That stuff gets leaked out. The stuff with Huber's investigations, Horowitz, Durham, none of that stuff has got leaked out until the exact time that they wanted this stuff out. So I think if you go back a couple years and you pull up the clip where the media was talking to Trump, and he said, the leaks are real, but the news is fake. I think people read that completely backwards. I think they were telling the exact truth there,
Right.
that there is a perception of chaos that has been sent out to figure out who the rats are.
I think you could be right about that, because there's a lot of misinformation that comes out, and I think they're trying to catch all these people that are leaking.
It's a smart play, man. That's the play. That's how you catch them.
So, one last thing, and this is very conspiratorial, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think it'll be interesting for people listening just to check out, just to see what it is there's a thing coming out tomorrow from Project Veritas. And the biggest thing, there's a video I sent to you guys earlier today. Did you get to watch it?
No, I was watching film.
Basically, what's the guy's name from Project Veritas?
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe. He was actually showing the Twitter suppression. He was actually showing, and it's hashtag expose CNN. So he's putting out this thing on CNN and all the different reporters. We don't really know what it is yet, but he's done a lot of these things before with Planned Parenthood and a lot of other, high-level people. And he's going to show, I believe this has to do with, he's got people from CNN, high-level people at CNN, basically saying how they've been lying to the American public and laughing about it, is what he's going to put out. But what he was really showing was the Twitter suppression. Because if you type in expose, it would say expose Fox News, expose James O'Keefe, explains it. And that was the trending data he was looking at. Mm-hmm. And his stuff had been retweeted over 200,000 times. The one thing that was exposed Fox News had been tweeted 69. And so that was an interesting thing. We've talked about, these social media companies suppressing information. But then also what he's going to put out tomorrow, I think is going to be pretty interesting. It could be a firestorm. It could be.
Along that same line, didn't Shepard Smith, did he quit Fox News this week?
Well,
he did.
Did he quit or did he get fired?
Well, he came out and he did his kind of farewell speech there at the last minute. But some things I read said that he was escorted out of the building, which normally means that you were terminated.
Because if you quit, they to get you off their property, they'll escort you so you don't fall and sue them, like, oh, I broke my back, So that you can't quit and have that happen.
A lot of times they'll
somebody
escort
said he
you
gave
out.
a big speech about, he didn't want to work there no more. Basically.
But what are you going to say?
I mean,
you know what I mean. If you,
sure.
Again, I'm not saying that's true or not true,
Right.
but you're going to come on there and say Yeah, well, I wanted to stay, but we just decided it was a good time to part ways, and I was,
Well, I'd read that about escorting him out, and a lot of times, especially in financial institutions, if you get fired, they will escort you out so that you can't get any of your information. They basically just escort you out the building.
Well, at the coal mines, they'll, like somebody quits on a section, they'll come get you and make sure somebody's with you till you leave the property. Because they don't want, a compensation lawsuit or, something like that.
Right. Right. All right, guys. I've enjoyed that conversation. You got anything else, Brad, you want to go on the whistleblower?
No, I don't think so. I just, there's going to be a lot of them. There's going to be whistleblowers. We're getting ready to see a time where you're going to see whistleblowers come out that are leakers, and they're going to use that whistleblower blanket as protection. One thing that I look at with the whistleblowers, when I'm trying to just, in my little simple mind, saying, okay, does this seem like it's legit or not, is ask, well, how easy has it been for them to get from point A to point B, right? Because you go in these whistleblowers, Sybil Edmonds, and there's a list there's 20 of them who the people have been shut down. They couldn't talk. They've been suppressed. They've been raided in their homes. So when somebody comes up and they have easy access, and then they get this big book deal, and then they get this big movie from then that makes me question, okay, something's funny. How does this one person get all of this support and everybody else gets shut down? So I think as far as the whistleblowers on that, but the other thing to look for here with Project Veritas specifically, they've released a lot of stuff in the past, even in the last elections. It was Project Veritas that released the Google thing that we talked about on one of our first episodes, that whistleblower. But here's what you can probably expect. I'm just guessing here, but what you can probably expect when this stuff comes out is they won't deny the information. You'll get a non-denial denial, right? They won't deny the information. They'll flip the story and go after the character of the messenger and make themselves the victim. Always. Right? And you see this all the time. So if I accused you, if I said, JD broke into my house and stole my gun. Yeah. Well, if I ask you that, or if a reporter said, JD, did you steal Brad's gun? You know what you'd most likely say?
I say, Brad, Brad, he lies all the time. He's been a liar since he's been in high school.
But the first thing you would do is say, no, I didn't do that.
Right.
But if you did do it, and you don't say, I didn't do it, you go, oh, well, you know what, I'll tell you what. It really offends me that Brad would put my character into question like that, and I can't believe that he's made such accusations. And you'll see that all the time. They won't actually deny it. They will spin it around on the character of the accuser.
That's the play, guys. That's what they do. But I really feel like Brad is stalling because he knows what segment is next.
Oh, he's stalling. Yeah.
Is it football? What else can we talk about?
Yeah. Anything else, Brad, on the whistleblower that you'd like to speak about before we get into this week?
Let's just talk about whistles in general.
So, last segment, guys, as always, we talk about a little college football, and we do our picks. And JD had another real good week. He went 4-1 this week. I went 3-2, and Brad went 3-2 as well. So currently the standings are this: JD and I are tied, and I can't find where I put it. Where are we at? Here we go. Week 7, Jimmy D is 22-12 overall. Brad is 20-14. JD is also 22-12. So JD, good week. And none of us gamble. But we were having the discussion before the show started that, maybe it's something we ought to look into. We're all actually doing pretty good. Another good week of college football. There's some good games. Brad and I went to the UK game last night. My sister watched the Cats who beat Arkansas.
I got soused last night. I'll just be honest with you.
you had no idea.
Soused.
Yeah, JD, when we came in, he said, I don't even know who won the game, guys. Who won the football game? But the Cats played well. I mean, for who they were playing, Arkansas is really not very good. It was a pretty good game. We got down to 13-0 hole. And Lynn Bowden was our quarterback. He's also our best wide receiver, and he actually had a pretty good game, man. He broke some big runs. I think their game plan worked pretty well, and they ended up winning the ball game. But it was also Jared Lorenzen night. You know, we all know, we talked about that before. Jared Lorenzen is one of my favorite UK football players of all time.
Me too.
And it was they had, you know, kind of a ceremony for him. Brought his family out at the beginning of the game.
Very cool.
But I found some interesting, I guess, coincidences about the game last night. Check this out. Arkansas's potential game-winning drive late in the fourth quarter ended at the UK 22-yard line. 2 plays later, Lynn Bowden ran 51 yards down to the Razorbacks' 22-yard line to seal the victory.
How cool is that, man?
And last, if you average the score, it averages out to 22. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, for
awesome.
those of y'all that don't know, Jared Lorenzen was number 22. I'll tell you what I thought was cool last night was and for people watching the game at home, I'm sure they did it during the commercials, you couldn't see it, but the thing when it was kind of like the old concerts where you do the lighters, and they had everybody light up their phones. Mm-hmm. There was a couple things. I'm not an extremely emotional dude, and I'm not saying I was sitting up in the stands crying, but there was a couple things there, and I was like...
He was crying, JD. I was sitting right beside him.
I was like, golly, JD, you're going to have to give me a hug.
Yeah, but that was really cool, and they showed a picture of Lynn Bowden being interviewed after the game, and on the big screen, on the or whatever you call that, the big board. Jumbotron. It was Lynn Bowden, and behind him you could see Jared Lorenzen's face like he was looking down on his shoulder, man. It was just cool.
That is cool.
And, you know, and like I said, I was a big J-Lo fan, man.
And I think it's fitting that was against Arkansas.
Yeah, because that was the famous quote.
Yeah.
When he said,
why you leaving? Where y'all going? You missed a hell of a game.
Yeah. It was against Arkansas.
Right.
And he was
7
right.
times later, he was right.
Sure was. So that was really cool. You know, just being a UK fan and being a Jared Lorenzen fan. I know, you know, we got people in Israel listening who probably don't care about Jared Lorenzen, but it was a big deal to be there, and it was a fun night, and I did have to console Brad.
Well, that's a heck of an assumption to make. How do you know that we don't have somebody in Israel wearing a big hefty lefty number 22 jersey right now?
I hope they are.
I needed some consoling Friday night. I'm going to tell you right now.
Y'all had a rough game, man.
After the ball game, I was disappointed, man. More with our effort than anything. I hope we get to play those guys again.
I do too, because what we saw Friday night was not our team.
Right.
They did not play well.
Right.
They looked flat. I think, you know, you got Wes Carter coming up this weekend, who's going to be a chore because they beat the daylights out of Shelby Valley.
We match up. It's different matchups, though.
Just a different matchup.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
Good.
Yeah.
But no, like I said, I'm with the Cardinals, man. I still think we can make a run at this thing.
We can.
I think we can.
You know, a lot of times here at this high school program that we're with, we've lost the big games early in the season and come back and face these teams in the playoffs and beat them. We did that with Belfry. We got the brakes beat off of us like week 8 of the season.
Uh-huh.
We're back up there week 2 of the playoffs and beat them. So, high school football it's a funny game, man.
Yeah, it is. It's a funny
game. Don't
game.
count us out.
I still enjoyed it, man. I said I think the guys will come back strong this weekend. I really do. Yeah. Sometimes a little dose of reality too.
Yeah, come back down.
Bring back down. It'll refocus them, and I think they'll be fine. All right, so let's look at the games. All right, so this week's picks. First game is number 12 Oregon at number 25 Washington. Washington is a 4-point favorite. JD, what do you got?
Give me the Ducks.
Like the Ducks. Brad, where you at on that one?
I'm taking Washington.
Ooh, taking Washington, the 4-point favorite. I'm one of the Ducks, man. The Ducks beat the brakes off Cal last night. I mean, I don't know how good Cal is, but, I mean, they beat the daylights out of them. So I think the Ducks, 4 points on the road, I think they can cover that. Second game, number 16 Michigan is a 4-point favorite at number 7 Penn State.
Give me the Lions.
That was the game that separated you from us last night, was the Penn State game, because the Penn State-Iowa game,
yeah,
I think the spread was like 2.5 points, and they ended up covering that. So that was Brad. Who you got on that one?
I'm taking Penn State.
I'm gonna take Michigan. I'm gonna go with Michigan. I think Michigan. I think Penn State. That number 7 ranking, they barely beat Iowa last night.
Yeah, but Michigan only beat Iowa by 7 points.
Yeah.
And there was a 10-point spread.
I think that's.
I picked Michigan that time. I'm picking them again.
Yeah. No, I'm going Michigan this week. And then I picked, let's go this game next, Pitt at Syracuse. Syracuse is a 6.5-point favorite. I'm going to take Syracuse. I think Syracuse will cover that.
Where are they playing at?
Playing at Syracuse.
Man, give me Pitt.
Pitt and then
Syracuse.
Brad likes Syracuse. And then our last two games, I picked both these games because we usually, we'll pick the same games for the most part. And most of the spreads are pretty close. But I picked these two games specifically because the spreads are so large.
Oh, no, these are hard to pick.
These are hard to pick. So you got Tennessee at number 1 Alabama, and Alabama,
I don't care what the spread is. Yeah, give me Alabama.
It's a 29.5-point spread.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Brad?
I'm taking Tennessee.
Woo! I'm going to take Bama because I still think Bama will beat them by 40. But Tennessee's played pretty well the last few weeks, man. I mean, they haven't played bad.
Alabama the last 2 weeks either.
Yeah, that's true. And the last game, I left them off the list this week because I just couldn't pick against them. I was afraid I would have to. But Kentucky at number 10, Georgia. Georgia's a 27-point favorite.
I'm taking Georgia. Because they just got beat, they'll be pissed.
I can't believe they got beat by South Carolina. I was really surprised by
beat
that.
the brakes off us. I'm going to tell you right now.
I want to pick Kentucky just because I have to every week.
I'm picking Kentucky too. 27 points is a lot, and we're without our quarterback. But and JD, I was telling Brad on the way up here, the reason I think that is if we can run the ball, if you got Lynn Bowden back there, it's pretty tricky. Arkansas had a hard time with it last night, the way that they ran that offense. And Bowden can actually throw the ball.
Sure.
He threw it about 50 yards last night.
He's an athlete, boys.
Yeah, and so what I think will happen and why I think 27 is really high is because I think Kentucky will be able to move the ball some, and if they can, they'll run the clock. And our defense is playing halfway decent, and Georgia's offense hasn't looked great the last 2 weeks.
Well, we give up 20 points to Arkansas, and we got beat by – no, I'll take Georgia.
You're still with Georgia? But I think they could run the clock on them, and I think it'll be hard for Georgia to beat them by 27. That's my Kentucky fan rationale.
Now listen to me. I will gladly wear a Trump shirt if Kentucky wins that game. You know what I'm saying? If I lose this thing because of that game, I'll gladly wear it.
That's right. That's all right. Guys, that'll wrap this one up. We're about at our time here. So for you out there listening, once again, we just appreciate you. We really do. And you can check us out on iTunes, the Podbean app, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You got the Just Add Bourbon pretty much everywhere. Spotify, and again, the YouTube channel. If you really want to help us out, please go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that. But as we end the show, no matter how bad your week's been, no matter how bad your day's been, if you just add bourbon, it always gets a little bit better. Thanks, guys. See you next week.